minutes. Try to do this question. Just try, because we have a short class today. See if you can follow the steps that we did on page 177. I think we did one on page 177. This is also for homework 19. When we started homework 19, you can also look at numbers 44 and 45. So look at those 3 questions that we did yesterday and try to rewrite this in vertex form. If you get it wrong, you'll still learn from the mistake you made. So I'm going to say this one more time because I still see phones out. Please put away your phones. Please take out your earbuds. We have a short class. We're going to do the quadratic formula. And then you'll have time at the end of class to get extra help. So in your bell work packet, take out your bell work, find this question, and then follow those 3 examples. You can either look at page 177 as a reference, or you can look at the homework we started yesterday and just try to rewrite this in vertex form. And then we'll go through the steps again together. Okay, let's go through it together. So your first step is always going to be rewrite it, and you want to give yourself a gap. So make a gap between your B and C term. So that's going to be y equals, and you have x squared plus 4x, and then make a little gap. Okay, so we need to figure out what number I need to add in order to complete the square. I need to complete the square. So to complete the square, I need to add a number, and then whatever number I add, so I can make sure it's balanced, I need to take it away from that negative 12. So what number goes on the blank? Who remembers how do you figure out the number that goes here? Chris? Yes, it's the B number. And what is B? 4. And what's 4 divided by 2? 2. And what's 2 squared? 4. So who had that part? Who made it to that part? All right, that's good. So we're going to put a 4 on both of these blanks. Now we need to factor this down. This is a perfect square. Okay, this is a perfect square. And in order to factor it down, we need 2 numbers that would multiply to be A times C. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to 4, but also add to 4. So what 2 numbers can you think of that multiply to 4 and add to 4? Kenna? 2 and 2. Does everyone agree that 2 times 2 is 4 and 2 plus 2 is 4? So this is going to factor down to x plus 2 times x plus 2. But in math, whenever you multiply something against itself, we just give it an exponent. X plus 2 times x plus 2 can also be written as x plus 2 squared. So now we're ready to find our k value. So we need to simplify this. So if we take negative 12 and subtract 4, negative 12 minus 4 is negative 16. So this is vertex form right here. This is the exact same graph. If you were to graph this equation that we have right here, if you graph this and you graph this one, it's the exact same parabola. Every single point is going to match up. So now I want you to answer the 3 questions we have off to the side. Tell me, where is the vertex? So vertex, go ahead and write that. I also want to know the axis of symmetry, and if it has a min or a max. So take another 60 seconds and answer those 3 questions. So where's the vertex of this parabola? What's h and k? Is it 2, -16 or -2, -16? -2. Remember, you always flip the sign of h. H is always inside the parentheses and is always opposite. Axis of symmetry is x equals h, which is x equals -2. And will this parabola, is this parabola going to be a smile or is it a frown? Who says it's a smile? Who says it's a frown? Who's not sure? All right, so how we know is based off A. So looking at this equation, notice how is A positive or negative? It's positive. So I always think like A is for attitude. If you have a positive attitude, you're smiling. If you have a negative attitude, you're frowning. So this A is positive. So this graph looks like a smile. It looks like a smile, so it has a minimum. All right, so we're going to do the quadratic formula. You need a calculator, so if you don't have one on your desk, look around and find one. And we're going to go to page 183. So when you go to page 183, this is the quadratic formula. Who's seen this before? Raise your hand if you've seen the quadratic formula. Okay. So this is something that is covered in Algebra 1. It shouldn't be anything new. If you look on the board, you can see I also wrote it on both sides of the screen as a reference. You don't need to have it memorized. It will be provided to you on the test next week. Now there's a couple of pieces of this quadratic formula that I want to point out. And the first thing is, notice that it's always the opposite of B. So whenever you do the quadratic formula, we have to flip that sign for B. It's the opposite of B. And then plus or minus, this plus or minus is what gives us our two different answers. The square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay. So we're going to come back to example 1 because that has some pretty big numbers in it. We're going to do example 1 last. So what I want you to do is go to example 2. Go to page 184. And you can kind of see that they started by working it all out. In this example, for example 2, what is A, B, and C? What's A? A is 1. What's B?
4.
And what's C?
-17.
Okay, so that's important to figure out those three. And then they just put everything into the quadratic formula. Now, we're going to actually work out the check together in a second. I usually like to start by finding the discriminant, which is what's underneath the square root. So let's focus on this right here. I want you to notice that for that discriminant, they got 84. And 84 is under a square root, and it's not a perfect square. So what is the number in the box? What perfect square goes into 84? 4. So does everyone see how this was broken apart to 4 times 21? So the square root of 4 is 2, so that becomes 2. The 21 has to stay. This would be my final answer. I would accept this for full credit when you take your test next week. Now, you can go one step further and simplify it. Okay, when you simplify it, you're looking for a number that will go into all three of these terms. And the number that goes into 4, 2, and 2 is 2. So what they did was they divided it all by 2. All right, so you have a lot of space off to the left on page 184. So let's go ahead and do the check. So let's do that check together. So we watched them do it, so now it's our turn to do it. So off to the left, let's go ahead and do the check. So the first thing you want to do is identify A, B, and C. So what is A? A is just the 3, because we're only looking at the numbers. What's B? -5. And what's C? All right, so I want you to start by finding your discriminant. So you're going to start with the B squared minus 4AC. So I want you to use your calculator. And I'm doing the piece of the quadratic formula that is under the square root. So B squared, so that has to be a -5 squared minus 4 times A times C. Go ahead and type that in your calculator. And what did you all get?
37.
All right, I'm going to wait for a few moments because I don't see everybody trying to type it in their calculator. So I want everybody to practice because this is our chance to practice before the test. So type that in your calculator. Because remember, you can't watch math. You have to participate. That's the only way to learn. If you need help typing it in your calculator, bring up your calculator. I'll help you type it in. All right, so did anyone else get 37? I heard one person say 37. Okay, so 37, that's the number underneath the square root. Now, can we simplify 37? Is there a number in this box of perfect squares that will go into 37? So can we, oh, I'm sorry, yes?
Wait, so was this for the number under the square root?
Yes.
I thought it was -4 times A times C.
Okay, so it's right here. It's B squared minus 4 times A times C. So this is the part of the quadratic formula that we're doing. Only the part underneath the square root. So we're starting with that part.
But use the -5, right? I thought you just used B and C.
So no, you have to do B squared. So it's B squared
Oh, sure, that's the 3.
minus 4AC.
Yeah, I just thought that 3 was a 5. Sure.
Oh, okay. No, that's okay. I would much rather you ask a question than to not ask a question, because we're getting ready to take our third test, so we're getting close to the middle. So every grade counts. It's getting critical. All right, so anyone else have a question about how we got 37? Okay, so can we simplify 37? Is there a number that can go into 37 that's in that box? We can't divide it by 4. We can't divide it by 9. So we're actually going to leave it as 37. We can't take anything out. So now let's do the entire quadratic formula. So my exact answer, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. So we have x equals the opposite of b. So b is -5. What's the opposite of -5? +5. So you should have a +5 plus or minus the square root of 37. And that's divided by 2 times a. So your exact answer, your first exact answer is x equals 5 plus the square root of 37 divided by 6. And your second answer is x equals 5 minus the square root of 37 divided by 6. So that's your exact answer. Now, on the test next week, though, you have to give me the exact answer and you have to tell me the approximate answer in decimal form. So to approximate that, we need to actually figure out what is the square root of 37? So go ahead and type in your calculator. So the square root of 37 is a decimal. And do you remember from yesterday how you convert that to a decimal? You have to hit those two triangles. All right, so what did you get for, and I need 3 numbers. So, Chris.
6.082.
So would it be 082 or 083? 83, because you have to look at the number after the 2. And if the number after 2 is 5 or more, you have to raise the score. All right, so now, because that's what the square root of 37 is equal to, now let's go ahead and figure out our approximate answers. So our first answer I want you to type in your calculator is 5 plus 6.083 divided by 6. And this is an approximate. See what you get for that answer. And then do it again. And this time you're going to subtract 6.083 divided by 6. So go ahead and type both of those in your calculators to get your 2 approximate answers. So these are the exact answer. So you'll have to tell me this on the test. Now you're going to practice with your calculator getting the decimal. Now remember, if you're using the yellow calculator, there is a button that says N/D that you can use to put a fraction bar in. So if you want to use that button, you can. So when I add 5 plus 6.083 and I divide that by 6, my first answer was 1.847. Who got that? Jacoby, did you have a question?
On the calculator where you say N/D, do you press the second button? Now also.
You sure? Okay. Did you get 1.847? All right, now let's do our second one. Take 5 minus 6.083 and divide that by 6. And you should get negative 0.181. So that would be your 2 decimal answers. Let me see your calculator. So what you have to do, you can't type yours in one step. So you have to type in the numerator, 5 plus 6.083, hit enter, and then divide that by 6. So if you don't have a fraction bar in your calculator, you cannot type this in one step. You have to type in the top, hit the equal key, and then divide it by 6. So yeah, you can try it and see if you can get the right answer, whichever way you think. But the way you typed it in the first way wouldn't work. Yeah. So go ahead and take a moment and practice seeing if you can get the correct answer. So now let's look at example 3. Example 3 has complex roots, meaning that the discriminant is imaginary. So let's look at that. So I want you to notice that when they do the entire quadratic formula in one step. I like to start with b squared minus 4ac. It's nothing wrong with doing this way. I just have found that sometimes students get overwhelmed by just putting everything in at once. But there isn't a wrong way to do it. But what I want you to focus on right now is notice that for your discriminant, they got negative 156. So anytime you have a negative underneath the square root, you have to take that negative out. And then the second thing they did was look for a perfect square that would go into 156. And the perfect square that goes into the perfect square that divides into 156 is 4. So the square root of negative 1 is I, the square root of 4 is 2, and the root 39 would have to stay. So that's how they got this. I just want to make sure you understand how they got that 2i root 39. That's how they went from here to here. And then the last step was to simplify it by looking for numbers that would go into 8, 2, and 10. And the numbers that go into 8, 2, and 10 are 4, 1, and 5. I mean, the number that goes into 8, 2, and 10 is 2, right? Because 8, 2, and 10 are all even. So we divided all three of these numbers by 2. So this became a 4. The 2 changed to a 1, and the 10 changed to a 5. But I want to be clear that on the test next week, if you stopped right here, you would still get full credit. So now let's look at that check that's right below example 3, and let's do that one. Let's work through that one together. Yes.
How come you stop right there?
How come it's not what?
How come when you stop right there, you can still get full credit?
So I'm not going to take off for you I don't take off for unreduced fractions in this class. So for example, if it was 2/4 and you didn't write it as 1/2, I generally don't take off for that. So, and it's at the bottom of example 3. Let's list our A, B, and C values. So A is 9. What's B? And what's C? So we're going to start by finding B squared minus 4AC. So B squared minus 4 times A times C. Go ahead and type that in your calculator. We get a really big number. I think you get, is it negative 639? Negative 657? Hold on, let me type it in again. Let's type it in. So parentheses, negative 3 squared minus 4 times A. A is 9. C is 18. All right, I got negative 639.
That's what I got.
Anyone else get negative 639? If you didn't get negative 639, you can bring up your calculator. I'll help you figure out what you typed in wrong. So remember that this is the part that's underneath the square root, right? So what do you do when there's a negative underneath a square root? What do you have to do with the negative? You have to take it out. So I'm going to separate this down to negative 1 times 639. Now 639 is a big number, but there is a number in the box that goes into 639. So go ahead and start dividing it. See if you can figure out the number. There is a number that will divide into 639 that is a perfect square. Don't say it out loud. I want everybody to try to find it so you can practice. So you can take 639 divided by 81. It's 639 divided by 64. Keep going up the ladder until you figure out the number. So anybody find the number? What number goes into 639? 9. 9 times what? 71. So let's break this apart to negative 1 times 9 times 71. So what is the square root of negative 1? I. Good. And what's the square root of 9? 3. And the 71 has to stay. So this is my discriminant. And honestly, this is the hard part of the quadratic formula. So now that we have done that, everything else is going to go by very quickly. So let's write our answer. So x equals, and it's the opposite of b. So notice that b is -3, and you always flip that sign when we write our final answer. So it's not going to be a -3, it's going to be a +3, plus or minus. Now I'm going to write my discriminant that we already simplified. And that's divided by 2 times 9. So x equals 3 plus or minus 3i root 71 all over 18. So again, that would be perfectly fine. I would give full credit for that answer, but technically, this can be reduced. Okay? So, and when you reduce it, you're looking at these 3 numbers that I have in yellow. Is there a number that will divide evenly into all 3 of those numbers? 3. So technically, the right answer would be to divide those 3 numbers by 3, which will give you x equals 1 plus or minus 1i root 71. And what's 18 divided by 3? 18 divided by 3 is 6. So this is the best answer. That's the best answer right there. But I will take this also for full credit. Okay, so we kind of ran out of time a little bit. So I'm not going to go back and do example 1 because I got a couple of announcements I want to make. The first announcement is homework. Let's talk about homework. Homework 20 is due on Monday. Go ahead and copy those questions down. Even though you don't have school tomorrow, you still have an assignment. Now that assignment is to simply watch a video and take notes. So does everyone see our Canvas page at the front? This pink or purple, you need to click here. It's going to take you to a video. And that video is going to go over page 185 and 186 in your book. I am not going to go back over that material on Friday. So you need to watch that material because those questions will be on the test. The video is about 12, maybe 15 minutes. So does everyone understand what the expectation is of you tomorrow, Thursday, October 6th? You can do it today, get it over with, or you can do it tomorrow, but you need to have it done by Friday because it goes over pages 185 and 186, and I'm not reteaching that material on Friday, and it's on the test. So it's critical. So are we clear? All right.